All right. So, as to my thoughts on what's been rolling the rounds lately, now I'm sure this will probably be another one of those opinions that I share with a rare few. But I think that those rare few are good people and they know what they're on about. Now, something came across my feed here. The shit we get shoveled every day on the interwebs and whatnot. And a thought came to my mind because I saw this and I was like, well, any of y'all that know my thoughts on cannabis use and guns have been keeping up quite a bit and know what my thoughts on it is. So I frame my thought specifically towards this. If I was to be putting my word in the ear of anybody who has function or form over this, there is no foundational law that states that you may not utilize substances for recreation or otherwise for medicinal purpose and at that same moment utilize a firearm. As would be appropriate to point out that things like tobacco use and alcohol and the use of firearms are not regulated together fairly often unless inebriated, and those are called those are a different set of law. That's the tavern law, and that was if you got too fucking shit faced to be able to walk home, they'd walk you to the jail, let you sleep it off, and that's later in American history, but there are some that go back there to way back there in history, but that's more to do with the tyrannical governments we were trying to get away from. So, concept was no, you might still need to actually shoot a bear on your way home. If you can walk yourself home, you can go home. If you can't go home, your firearms are going in the lockup for the night and you're going to sleep it off just so that we can be sure you don't die on us. You know, a general courtesy. That's what that is. So, and it was a courtesy that could be extended. If somebody refused, it was on them. But they had to walk themselves home. Now, on the flip side of this, Prohibition, directly the Prohibition era, is the first time we get marijuana put on regulation, opiates put on regulation, which I thought, I think some opiates can actually incapacitate you, but also some of them are actually more useful for pain relief. And so those people that need that because they have an adverse reaction and they know it to some other chemical substance, they shouldn't be deregulated from having a firearm. Because at the same time, just because of instances, like singular instances, we can say, somebody got so overwhelmed because there was a criminal law in place that made it impossible for you to lawfully carry a firearm if you were doped up on drugs, already in place at this time, and this person utilized a firearm to commit a felony crime in order to pay for drugs. That person's initiation point is that the drugs were illegal. And so everything beyond that doesn't matter anymore. If the drugs are illegal, everything after that, it does not matter to them because they've already committed the crime in order to aid or benefit their lives. This stigmatizes the use of chemicals for things like pain relief, psychological aid. And remember, I say that as aid. I don't say that as that medication does anything more than just dull the riot in your head, which can be accomplished by other means. Mostly meditation. Some people need to get religion. Some people just need to smoke some weed. And it does work. Some people need to go on a trip, like an actual, MDMA acid trip, to completely silence that. I'm not joking about this. This is real shit situation. I've seen people that have lost their minds because they were given the wrong treatment because their doctor thought, oh, well, instead of building up to that treatment or doing it the right way. And this is why I personally utilize medical marijuana. In a medical ideal. Not in a, I'm gonna fucking get high and just, do whatever. That's not what this is about. This is about specifically, I have chronic nerve pain from one fight in particular, but from several fights over my life. And I used to be a mixed martial artist. It's one of the things I did. Actually fucking did, not like what somebody might troll me as. And so, and again, the whole dojo idea, you don't necessarily have to be in a dojo to study the martial arts and to understand them. I went to a dojo several times with my sisters, for instance. They were sitting there saying, like, dude, you already know how to fight. Why are you here? It's like, because I want to refine it. I want to understand. I want to learn. Of course, my aggression always got in the way of that, but I did learn. And I learned very well. I still practice the martial arts in form and speed, and every now and then I'll hit the bags. But I can only do that if my physical body allows me to do that. And after being in so many fights, and one fight in particular, I might throw a hernia throwing a punch hard enough. Just saying. So, and that's a surgical hernia, by the way. Not this joke of, well, I don't work out. No, I kind of do, but I kind of don't. How do I explain it? Every now and then, just random as shit, I'll drop and do a bunch of push-ups. Or random as shit, I'll sit there and I'll do 3 or 4 hours straight of just Wing Chun Kata. And I mean getting fast with it, not just sitting there and playing games with all the, like it's a dance and whatnot. No. Every single motion, fast, deliberate, moving forwards and through my target. And this is where people, they fundamentally do not understand Wing Chun, because they sit there and they think, oh, well, it's like in the movie where he's throwing that punch way out there and he's barely tapping dude in the face. But what you don't see in the movies is that while you see him fist up like this and it's only out to here, you're not seeing where their feet are. See, if I could show you that, I would. Because basically, dude is right here when he gets hit. Then that moves out to here when you see the flash in the frame of the punch. So you're not seeing from here to there. This is where, people, they fundamentally don't understand things like the martial arts. The martial arts is an intimate fighting experience. It is not, oh, well, I do all these dancey moves and shit. No. My last fight after I got stabbed wasn't really a fight. It was kind of just for fun. A little fucking fun sparring match. People thought, oh, well, fuck, dude, this guy got fucked up. Maybe just, if you want to go at him, little girl, that's fine, And it's like, no, I'm not doing this. I don't fight women. What the fuck is this shit? And he's like, no, dude, you've been through one hell of a fight. If you can even hold your own against her, she's pretty good. If you can hold your own against her, and I'll hang out with you, dude, because, we're tight anyways. But this was me and my brother, by the way. My brother was standing there watching this shit go down. I'm like, all right, look, seriously, I'm gonna put up some rules then. Nothing here. Okay? Nothing here. And then I won't hit you with everything I got. We'll do a sparring match. Just like Bruce Lee in the movie did Enter the Dragon. the Curse of the Dragon or something like that, or not Bruce Lee, but Jason Lee when he played that part, where he's doing open hands. We're sitting there and we're doing open hands. She's like, I didn't come out here to play patty cake with you, and swings out and cuffs me one across the face, across here. Now, anybody who knows about that previous fight I was stating knows I got hit right here, from across my chest and up this way. So all of this was turned into powder. So all of this is just kind of floating. She caught me a cuff right there, and I was like, oh, and my body just took over. And it was just... And then I literally just threw her almost on her ass, turned around, and at that moment, because my brain wasn't going yet quite, but my body was still going, and I thought, shit, she's going to hit her head. I spun around backwards and caught her head on the back of my calf. It was just like, I didn't know I could do that. And that was really cool. And it was like one of those, I haven't done that move before, so being able to pull it off that crisp and clean was hella awesome. I'm just gonna say that day was one of those, like, I knew I could still do it. And I'm thankful to my brother for even talking me into this shit. Because this chick is crazy. I'm gonna be fair and honest with you. And she's fast. She's, again, it's a woman, all right? And like I said, I don't fight women. This was just a general kind of funsy sparring match. And my body responds to trauma to my brain differently than how I would normally, without all the physical. So being hit, my brain went into autopilot. My body went into autopilot and overdrive. And it took that split second after my decision had been made and everything was already flying fury of hands and fists and feet and whatnot, I realized, oh shit. And it really was an oh shit moment. In the midst of an instant, your brain goes so fast in the middle of a fight. And I don't even really call this a fight. This was just sparring after an actual fight. And being in the hospital and being in a coma. So that's real. Don't even fuck with me on that shit. You'll find out if you go and you look it up. That's about when I was 25 that all happened. Anyways, this little sparring match just still sticks in my mind because it was at that moment that I felt that confidence again, and it wasn't. I thank her for that. I thank my brother for that because they was cool as shit on that. Now, I don't even know how I got off on this tangent, but... Oh, martial arts. Right. A lot of these cheesewads that go out there, they watch all this UFC shit, and they don't realize that there is a difference between a UFC fighter and a martial artist. The UFC fighter has stamina for days, but they are sloppy. For the most part, you watch the fights, they are sloppy. And it is because of that mismatch in calculation. Cockiness versus actual experience. This is why when I first started in the martial arts, I got scared of my own self because I realized, dude, no, that's fucking the shit you learned, Blaine, is dangerous as hell. What other people learned, that was for in the rings and fucking around and having fun. You learned how to fight because you were fighting for your life, and that's a whole different level of fuck around and find out. I didn't have to fight on a prison yard, and I thank God for that. I thank any entity that there is for that. But I'm straight up with you when I says I learned how to fight to literally get the fight over with. There's no ground and pound. I'm going to put you on your ass and you're either going to stay there or you're going to get knocked back down there. That's how I fight. I am going to sit you down and you are going to learn a lesson. Or you are going to get back up and you are going to get sat down again until you learn a lesson. That is my mentality and all of that shit. So, and that is the actual martial way. That is sit down, shut the fuck up, and listen. Versus, okay, we're going to get in a ring and box it out and do this, that, and the other. Okay, great. You're going to grapple and swing kicks and all that shit. But do you understand the fundamental of you scramble their brains enough, they can't get back up? Do you understand the fundamental of you still need to breathe? And every breath you take without having to move is a breath they don't take from you. Kind of interesting how that works out. Now, what is the whole concept of all of this? Well, it comes back to the responsibility of the individual to not fight. This is the martial code. There's the martial way, and then the martial code. The martial code states that because I can do this, I must always attempt to not do this if it can be avoided. I can kick your ass to the point where I wrap you up like a fucking pretzel and then throw you in the oven of deceit and dissent and pain. Or I can be courteous. And if I'm courteous, hopefully you're not going to cross that threshold of thinking you've got one over on me, because I will whoop the dog shit out of you. That is the martial code. There's a difference here between somebody who's always keyed in for the fight, always wants the fight, versus somebody who's, man, I'm just trying to live my life, but I will fuck your shit up if you try. Sifu on the mountain, tell us what more. Tell us what more. I'm making jokes, but y'all hear me now. It's that time of the morning. Folks is up and about, ski said. Now, does competence with a firearm have anything to do with competency of mind? Sure. Does competency of having a firearm and competency of a mind decrease beyond a sustainable point when substances are used responsibly? I would argue no. Because this whole time, I have been, as is appropriate to my philosophy of what armed is, armed, and upon my person, I also have a firearm. Well, an antique firearm, but for lack of a better way of pointing out the purpose of it, still a long-range hole punch, still a projectile weapon, still capable of death or great bodily harm. However, I've been smoking tobacco this whole time. Before I even did all this, I had me a toke to help relax my core so that I'm not standing here hunched over, shaking while I make this video like you can see now. You see the difference? This is me when I'm not in pain. And this is how I can actually function. And that is half psychosomatic and half the medication. Because of the fact that I have nerve endings in my abs that don't line up. Because I had a laparoscopy that when the dog put me back together, he did the best he could. But, time is important in a surgery. And sometimes things don't heal up in line. You know what I'm saying? That will cause you pain for the rest of your life. Even if your bladder mesh stays in place, even if your intestinal mesh stays in place, even if all the rest of that stays in place, your matrices heal back. Even if all that works out for you, you still have this issue of your abdominal wall. The nerves are offset to each other. And so that's always going to be pain. Always. You can never heal that back once that scar tissue's there. And so for the rest of my life, I will either be in pain or having to utilize some form of chemical in order to reduce that pain or impede that pain, or with what marijuana does for me, medically remove the pain firing specifically within my hypersensitivity regions that's in my skin. All your pain receptors in your skin. It doesn't do shit for the inside core. It really doesn't. That's still there. It just doesn't hurt as much. But for what's going on with my skin, I can't feel a thing. Pretty much. I'm numb. And it feels good. It makes it so I don't have to feel all of that pain. It does not, however, remove my spatial awareness. It does not, however, remove my mental competency and my mental acuitiveness. Now, anybody who doesn't know what acuitive means what you perceive, what you see, and how real everything is to you. If a mountain lion charged up on my ass right now while I'm recording this, I would shoot it. Because I would perceive a threat. And that's how that works. It has nothing to do with whether or not smoking weed or smoking tobacco or had a couple of cups of coffee this morning or had some whiskey last night or any of that. Really, it doesn't. It does not affect my capacity to affect my own defense competently. It does not affect my ability to affect my own defense not just prudently, but also with a legal and moral understanding. You understand now? There's a reason why I went with black powder rather than a modern firearm, even though I can buy modern firearms after respect and fashion and not incapacitated at any point in time. That's more up to the person at the counter. But I'm autistic as fuck, and that's why I go in several times to befriend the guy at the counter so that they understand. Hey, dude, no, this guy's just really stupid, wicked smart, and has a bunch of problems. A bunch of problems. Concussions, this, that, and the others. Fights he's been through, this, that, and the other. And of course, California's mutual combat law made that possible. I want to point that out to you. But their self-defense laws suck. So anyone who says that, oh, well, California has great self-defense laws, you know, you don't have to stand your ground with this, that, and the other. No, you don't have to stand your ground. They also have mutual combat law, where if you're both fighting, but it's literally, you know, non-lethal force, it's hand-to-hand non-lethal force, it's considered mutual combat. If you are fighting and either of you utilizes lethal force, that becomes assault with a deadly weapon. But martial artists got so good they were able to do grave bodily harm. And this is the shit that I'm talking about. Like, you know, having been a martial artist in the state of California, learned a lot of things about that, you know, and in that realm of being. And yeah, you can go to prison for fucking beating somebody's head in because you're a fighter, not an artist. You really can. Just because it went too far over the line. California is an all or nothing state when it comes down to the law. Knowing that is actually what kept me alive and safe. And after the age of 18, out of a fucking facility for the most part, prison, mental health, doesn't matter. But that's what fucking California will do to you. They will actually throw you to the mental health wolves rather than be like, hold up a second, you know, no, this was two people who understood what the fuck was going on and other people butting their heads in when they shouldn't have. Honest to God. I was the one butting my head in when I shouldn't have. on a couple of those occasions. Just pointing out to you, nobody's infallible. Mm-hmm. A little moist outside. Like, really moist outside. Tobacco's not burning. Anyways, what's my point in all of this? Just little tidbits of knowledge that I can hand out, pass out, people can maybe benefit from. Because I see a whole lot of dumbassery in the world, and it's just wow. Some of it's old, some of it's new. But you got to remember, nothing is new under the sun. It's all been done. I mean, even the math that I pointed out points that out pretty succinctly. I mean, that's a mathematical equation that Einstein, Rosen, and Potts came up with for the explanation of time. And the physics debates back in the I think it was like 40s. Anyways, it might have been the 30s. Right now, things escape my mind. This is one of the problems with having been in too many fights, having had too many head injuries. I can remember things off the top of my head like as if it was yesterday. Smells, tastes, sounds, down to a photograph, down to an absolute picture perfect look of it on some situations. And then others, the fuck was I doing? That's the problem with having an eidetic memory and brain damage. And yes, I do have brain damage. I got, like I said, I got into that fight. It was years ago now. But, you know, I healed back some and then some of it didn't. And that happens. That is a reality. We are humans. We're self-healing, self-regulating machines, but we don't build back perfect. You know, biologically speaking, we don't build back perfect. Want and wish that we could, but we can't. That is one thing that is true. We cannot build back perfect. Science has made some fucking super advancements. I mean, the pharmaceuticals and whatnot have made some super advancements in that, and I do applaud them on that. However, the pharmaceutical companies are, for lack of a better way of saying it, they are the devil. You know, making something so incredibly outwardly priced that, you know, for instance, for me, if it hadn't been for the Victim of Violent Crimes Act in the state of California, I would have had a $600,000 medical bill that I could not have paid. In order to save my life. Because trauma laparoscopy, specialists, medical equipment used, time spent there. It's the biggest factor. The time spent in a coma so that my body could heal to the point where I could wake up without going into shock. Medically induced coma is nothing to fucking sneeze at. It is wicked as hell. Because you go through some shit. Especially if your body stops functioning during the surgery and your brain registers that. So it starts to go into shutdown mode. And then you get brought back to life. And it's like, holy fuck, what the fuck happened there? So everything that's going on and all that, all this compounds. And it adds to your medical bill, by the by, because they have to do all this extra special background shit to teach and this, that, and the other, and rewire your brain. There is a cost to fighting. And it does not matter how big or small the effort you make is. There is a cost to it. Every single time. You could be completely untouched by your opponent in a fight. There's still a cost. And it may actually be nerve damage that you don't see for years. Just pointing that out. This is one of those reasons why I'm saying when it comes down to certain treatments that aid people, such as have aided me, there should be no point of distinction where we say impossible because you use it. How much do you use? How often? What is its effects on you? And then, you know, those would be the fucking questions if they were said, if they were questioned at all. What are its effects on you? If. To me, it's more of, all right, you look particularly sane. You appear to be knowledgeable in what you're doing. And, you know, you're here, obviously, you want to buy something. You want something out of this transaction, so how can I help you? And it should be up to the guy at the counter. Not some fuck sneeze down in Washington, D.C. or in Langley, Virginia, or across the country, or in one of these other hubs around the country that has no fucking bearing on you, has never met you. You are a file to them. What does that file know that that man at the counter can't deduce within about 15 seconds? I'm just pointing this out to you, even with dishonest customers. You have an intuitiveness as a human being to be able to sense things and know that there's something just wrong. Once you've ascertained what's wrong, you can move past it. Or make a decision to say, no, I'm not going to do that. Because I'm not going to be liable for your actions if that ever were to come into case. And I don't think that that should either. But that's a different topic, different point. When it comes down to substance use and firearms, hailing back to the inebriation laws, That is the point where things become fuzzy and gray. Maybe I could see some tangible work there, but I do not see tangible work in a complete and utter ban on anything. Specifically because if it works, and it's stupid, but it works, is it really stupid? Food for thought.